Picture this. It's 1967. The summer of love is unfolding in San Francisco. Muscle cars are terrorizing suburban streets, and Chevrolet has just unleashed something so outrageous, it bordered on reckless. A Corvette so wild, the company actually tried to hide it from the average buyer. This wasn't just a car. It was a weapon wrapped in fiberglass. I'm talking about the 1967 Chevrolet Corvette L88, a beast built in secret, shrouded in myth, and destined to become one of the rarest Corvettes ever made. Today, we're counting down 20 weird, shocking, and hidden facts about the L88. And wait until you hear why number 1 almost never made it to production. The L88 wasn't just a Corvette. It was the ultimate Corvette, a machine that Chevrolet only built for racers, but accidentally cemented as one of the greatest collector cars in American history. From secret horsepower numbers to deleted radios and bizarre paint mysteries, this is a ride packed with stories that don't add up until you dig deeper. Buckle in, and if you love uncovering hidden corners of car history, hit that like button and subscribe. Let's kick off with fact number 20. GM tried to hide its existence. Chevrolet didn't want just anyone driving the L88. Backstory? In 1967, General Motors had an official corporate ban on racing. Publicly, they couldn't admit to building a race car. Yet, behind closed doors, engineers at Chevrolet's performance division greenlit RPOL88, an option code buried in the order book like a classified file. Here's the kicker. Chevrolet went out of its way to discourage buyers. The sales literature didn't even brag about it. No glossy brochures, no flashy advertisements. Dealers were told to steer casual Corvette buyers away. If you didn't know the code, you'd never find it. The twist? Only the most hardcore racers, drag strip veterans, and SCCA insiders knew how to check that box. Collectors today treat this secrecy as a badge of honor. Spotting an authentic L88 means scanning for correct trim tags, aluminum heads, and deleted comfort options. If you find one, you've struck gold. And if you think hiding an entire car was strange, wait until you hear about the horsepower lie in number 19. Advertised horsepower was a lie. Chevrolet rated the L88 at 430 horsepower. That was fiction. Backstory. The L88 packed a 427 cubic inch V8 with aluminum cylinder heads, forged internals, and a monster Holley carburetor. It was a big block designed to dominate racetracks. But on paper, Chevy deliberately lowballed the number. Why? Insurance and politics. In the late 1960s, high horsepower ratings spooked insurers and watchdog groups. By listing 430 horsepower, Chevy made it seem like the L88 wasn't much more potent than the already famous 427/435 tri-power. Here's the twist. On dynos, real L88s churned out closer to 550. Some claim 560 horsepower, straight from the factory. With race fuel and headers, output could climb higher. That made the L88 not just fast. It was one of the most brutal street-legal cars in America. Collectors know this underrated game boosts value. An L88 isn't just powerful. It's a symbol of how automakers outwitted regulators. And if you think horsepower trickery is clever, number 18 reveals how Chevy weaponized fuel to keep amateurs away. Pump gas? Forget about it. You couldn't run an L88 on regular fuel. Backstory. The L88 demanded 103-octane race gas, the kind only available at tracks or special stations. Why? That 12.5-to-1 compression ratio. It was astronomical for the time, squeezing every ounce of power, but requiring exotic fuel to survive. Here's the kicker. If you tried running an L88 on regular pump gas, the engine would detonate itself to death. Chevrolet knew it. That's why they never recommended the car for street use. Dealers who knew the score told customers bluntly, if you can't get race gas, don't buy it. This wasn't just a car. It was a rolling filter. Only people dedicated enough to secure the right fuel supply could own one. That made the L88 more of a racehorse than a commuter. Today, collectors view this as one of the quirks that makes the car untouchable. It was exclusive not by luxury, but by chemistry. But it gets weirder. 17 proves Chevrolet stripped comforts away on purpose. You paid more, but got less. The L88 package wasn't just expensive, it deleted things. Backstory. In 1967, checking the RPO L88 option added about $947 to the Corvette's $4,300 base price, a massive sum. But what you got was strange. No heater, no radio, no air conditioning, not even a defroster. Why? Because Chevrolet wanted no distractions, no weight, and no excuses. This was a race car in showroom disguise. The heater delete alone was so rare for American cars in the 60s that some customers thought it was a misprint, the part nobody talks about. This deletion strategy raised eyebrows at dealerships. Imagine paying more, only to lose features your neighbor got for free in his cheaper Corvette. Today, that absence is the telltale. Spot an original L88 with no heater controls, and you're staring at one of the rarest production Corvettes in history. And if you think deleting radios was extreme, wait until you hear about number 16, where Chevrolet literally tried to ban the L88 from the streets. Chevrolet wanted it off limits. The L88 wasn't intended as a streetcar, period. Backstory. Chevrolet engineers, especially Zora Arkus Duntov, the father of the Corvette, had one mission: build a track weapon. So they coded restrictions right into the option book. Order an L88? You were automatically locked out of certain comfort and convenience features. But there's a twist. Chevy never legally restricted sales. In theory, anyone could order one. In practice, the company's marketing silence and dealer discretion kept most out of civilian hands. Here's the kicker. GM allegedly even pressured dealers to only sell L88s to known racers. There are period stories of sales managers flat out refusing customers who didn't look serious. The result? Only 20 L88s were built for 1967. 20. That's less than many exotic European supercars of the era. Collectors today drool over that production number. It makes the L88 rarer than Ferrari 250 GTOs in some circles. And if you think 20 units is shocking. Number 15 shows how one wrong paint color almost doomed the car. The paint mystery nobody solved. The 1967 Corvette L88 carried a hidden quirk: paint codes. Backstory. Chevrolet offered 10 exterior colors that year, from Marlboro Maroon to Goodwood Green. But period reports suggest that a handful of L88s slipped out wearing unusual hues not listed in standard brochures. A rumored special order, black for instance, wasn't supposed to exist in 1967. Yet some L88 survivors appear in it. Here's the kicker. GM never officially acknowledged these deviations. Some believe they were dealer swaps. Others think they were pilot program leftovers, painted before the final color list locked in. Still others suggest racing customers got backdoor color favors. The twist? These oddballs drive collectors insane. A documented L88 in non-standard paint, if authenticated, commands astronomical premiums. Auction watchers recall a sunfire yellow L88 that caused a frenzy because it was the only one verified in that shade. For spotters, trim tags and lacquer analysis tell the story. If the code doesn't match brochures, you might be holding a Corvette Ghost. And if you think paint mysteries are wild, number 14 reveals how one factory-installed option almost started a legal battle. Side exhausts were a legal gray area. Those thundering side pipes, they weren't just for show. Backstory: the L88 could be ordered with factory side exhausts. They looked menacing, they sounded apocalyptic, and they boosted performance by reducing back pressure. But here's the twist. By the mid-1960s, noise ordinances were spreading in U.S. cities. Some local regulators argued the Corvette's side pipes were too loud for public roads. Here's the kicker: GM shipped them anyway. Chevrolet engineers shrugged off the legal gray zone, betting that buyers would rather risk a ticket than lose performance. And they were right. Period magazine testers noted decibel levels that rivaled small aircraft. Collectors today love this controversy. An authentic L88 with side exhausts is a dream find, though many replicas bolt them on to fake the look. The real trick? Spotting the factory-correct shield shape and welded seams. And if side exhausts flirted with legal limits, number 13 proves the L88 broke limits of another kind. Brakes that weren't ready for the engine. Brakes that struggled to keep up. The L88 was built to go, not stop. Backstory: standard on the 1967 Corvette were four-wheel disc brakes, advanced for the time. But the L88's 550 horsepower Fury exposed their weakness. On racetracks, drivers reported fade after only a few hard laps. Heat boiled fluid, pedal travel lengthened, and the car's stopping power vanished. Here's the kicker: Chevrolet knew it, but still shipped the L88 with essentially the same hardware as lesser Corvettes. Why? Because they assumed racers would upgrade to aftermarket racing brakes anyway. The part nobody talks about? Some early owners who didn't swap them out ended up in accidents, and whispers circulated that GM downplayed the issue. Period racers often swapped to heavy-duty metallic pads, or even transplanted exotic racing calipers. Collectors today, they pay attention to wear patterns. An unrestored L88 with battle scars on its calipers and rotors suggests track duty, ironically boosting provenance. But it gets weirder. 12 shows how Chevrolet didn't just skimp on brakes. They played games with transmissions too. Only one transmission choice. You didn't get to choose your gearbox. Backstory: in 1967, the Corvette lineup offered a buffet of transmissions, from 3 speeds to 4 speeds, and automatics. But order an L88. You got one option only: the Muncie M22 Rock Crusher 4-speed, no exceptions. Why? Because the M22 was the only gearbox durable enough to handle the L88's insane torque. Its nickname came from the noisy, whiny, straight-cut gears that sounded like gravel in a blender. On the street, it was brutal. On the track, it was bulletproof. Here's the kicker: Chevrolet didn't even bother offering an automatic. They assumed if you wanted an L88, you knew how to row your own gears. Period. Collectors today hunt for the correct M22 stampings, since fakes abound. Spotting the right input shaft grooves and case markings separates real rock crushers from imposters. And if you thought one transmission was limiting, number 11 proves Chevrolet also limited what fuel system you could run, locking racers into one radical setup. No carb options, just the monster Holly. Chevrolet made the L88's fuel system non-negotiable. Backstory: in an era where performance cars sometimes offered multiple carburation choices, dual quads, tri-powers, the L88 gave you no say. It came only with one, a massive Holley 850 CFM 4-barrel carburetor perched on an aluminum intake manifold. Here's the twist. This wasn't convenience, it was control. Chevrolet didn't want underprepared buyers tinkering with delicate setups. They wanted consistency for racers, and the Holley was the only piece they trusted at full throttle. The kicker? That carb was so aggressive that around-town manners were miserable. Cold starts were cranky, idle was lumpy, and fuel economy was laughable. But stomp it? You unleashed one of the most fearsome induction roars in American muscle history. Collectors today treat an original Holley as sacred. Spotters check for date codes stamped on the carb body to verify authenticity. A mismatched carb can knock 6 figures off an L88's value. And if you think that's controlling, wait until number 10, where Chevrolet forced L88 buyers into another radical decision about cooling. The heavy-duty cooling system. The L88 came with a radiator the size of a suitcase. Backstory: Chevrolet engineers knew the 427 cubic inch monster generated obscene heat, so every L88 automatically came with the F41 heavy-duty cooling package. That meant a giant aluminum radiator, unique shrouding, and high-capacity fans. Here's the kicker. Unlike normal Corvettes, you couldn't delete it. Chevrolet mandated it, even though it added weight and cost. Why? Because they knew without it, the L88 would cook itself to death in traffic, or worse, on a track. The part nobody talks about? The cooling system was so specialized that many owners who later swapped out parts unknowingly destroyed originality. Collectors today obsess over correct radiator tanks, date-coded hoses, and fan blade stamps. Spotters tip: an L88 without its factory cooling setup raises red flags. The right parts make the difference between just another big block Corvette and $1 million unicorn. And if you think mandatory radiators were extreme, number 9 shows how Chevrolet even rigged ignition systems to limit misuse. The transistorized ignition secret. The L88 came with high-tech ignition for its time. Backstory: most Corvettes in 1967 ran conventional point-style ignitions, not the L88. Chevrolet fitted it with the transistorized ignition system, borrowed from racing programs, to handle high RPM and compression. Here's the twist. This was exotic tech in the 1960s, years before electronic ignition became common. It allowed hotter sparks, steadier timing, and fewer misfires. Without it, the L88's 12.5-to-1 engine would stumble and die under load. The kicker? Chevrolet buried this upgrade in the fine print. Dealers rarely mentioned it, and many early owners didn't even know their car was running advanced tech. Collectors love this. An original transistor ignition module, often mistaken for aftermarket, now confirms authenticity. It's one of those hidden in plain sight details that separates real L88s from clones. But even more shocking, there's 8 proves the L88 had to cheat safety laws just to survive in 1967. Safety laws almost killed it. In 1967, Washington nearly ruined the L88. Backstory: that year brought sweeping new safety and emissions standards. Cars needed energy-absorbing steering columns, dual-circuit brakes, side marker lights, and milder compression ratios. For a car like the L88, with sky-high compression and race-only parts, this spelled doom. Here's the kicker. Chevrolet only squeezed the L88 into production because the rules technically applied to the 1968 model year. That loophole gave Zora Arkus Duntov just enough runway to sneak 20 cars out the door in '67. The twist? Had regulations come 6 months sooner, the L88 might have been killed before birth. That explains why Chevrolet never promoted it heavily. They knew time was against them. Collectors today see the '67 L88 as the last of a wild breed, pure, unregulated horsepower, untouched by Washington. And if you thought safety nearly ended it, number 7 shows how racing politics actually forced Chevrolet's hand. Born from a racing ban, the L88 only existed because of a contradiction. Backstory: in 1963, General Motors issued a corporate ban on racing. Publicly, they pulled out of NASCAR, drag, and endurance events. But privately, engineers still fed racers parts through back channels. The L88 was the boldest example. It was a race engine disguised as a regular production option. Officially, it wasn't for competition. In reality, that was its entire reason to exist. Here's the kicker. Zora Arkus Duntov designed the L88 specifically to crush competition at SCCA and FIA events. GM couldn't say it out loud, but racers knew. The L88 was the ultimate loophole car. The part nobody talks about? By using the RPO system, Chevrolet gave themselves cover. If anyone accused them of racing, they could shrug. Hey, it's just an option code. Collectors today treat the L88 as proof of GM's double game. Anti-racing on paper, pro-racing in the showroom. And if secret racing agendas sound wild, number 6 reveals how one car almost ended up in government service. Rumors of a government-ordered L88, one of the strangest L88 legends, a government fleet connection. Backstory: period lore claims that at least one 1967 L88 was ordered through a government channel, possibly for testing purposes at a federal facility. Records are murky. No VINs have been publicly tied to it. But stories persist. Here's the twist. Some suggest it was evaluated for law enforcement high-speed pursuit use. Others claim it went to a proving ground tied to defense contractors. The truth? Still debated. Here's the kicker. If even one government-ordered L88 existed, it would shatter assumptions that all 20 went strictly to racers. It would mean Chevrolet's no civilians policy had exceptions in strange places. Collectors keep an eye on unusual paperwork. Cars with non-standard build sheets or fleet order anomalies fetch instant attention. If a government-marked L88 ever surfaced, it could break auction records overnight. And if you think a government L88 is strange, number 5 is where things turn downright explosive. Explosive fuel tank issues. The L88 had a dangerous weakness. Backstory: the '67 Corvette carried a rear-mounted fuel tank positioned above the rear suspension. With the L88's insane power, high-speed cornering sometimes caused fuel starvation, or worse, fuel slosh so violent it led to vapor lock. Here's the kicker. Some racers reported near explosions after long stints. At Le Mans, where Corvettes ran flat out, heat soak made the tank volatile. Chevrolet engineers quietly revised venting systems and baffles mid-year, but no official recall was issued. The twist? Because so few L88s existed, these fixes went almost unnoticed. Surviving cars with original, unmodified fuel tanks are practically unicorns, and borderline unsafe if driven hard. Collectors know the danger. Most Concours restored L88s display correct tanks for judging, but run modern replacements underneath for safety. That tension, originality versus survival, is part of the L88's legend, and if fuel was explosive, number 4 shows the price of the car itself blew minds too. The price tag that scared buyers away. The L88 was the most expensive Corvette of its year. Backstory: base 1967. Corvettes started around $4,240. Add RPOL88. and suddenly you were north of $5,700. That was Porsche 911 and Jaguar E-Type territory, not Chevrolet. Here's the kicker. For that price, you got less. No radio, no heater, no frills. Just raw performance. To everyday buyers, it made no sense. Dealers struggled to explain why anyone would pay more for less car. The twist? That sticker shock worked perfectly for Chevrolet. It filtered out posers and left only hardcore racers willing to pay the premium. Today, that pricing irony drives value. What once scared buyers away now makes the L88 one of the most valuable American cars ever sold, north of $3.8 million at auction. But if money was shocking, number 3 shows how movie stardom turned one L88 into pop culture royalty. Hollywood's hidden L88. Rumor has it, Hollywood wanted in. Backstory. While the L88 never starred in blockbuster films like Bullet or Vanishing Point, whispers persist that at least one made cameo appearances in promotional footage and stunt reels for studios testing hero cars. Here's the twist. A 1967 Corvette appearing in period TV shows has been debated as possibly an L88. Without VINs, proof is thin. But enthusiasts argue certain exhaust notes and engine bay glimpses in archival reels suggest the real deal. Here's the kicker. Even the rumor of Hollywood involvement boosts mystique. If verified, a screen-used L88 would instantly become the most famous of the 20 built. Collectors? They pore over film stills, matching trim tags to surviving examples. It's automotive detective work, part fact, part legend. But if Hollywood rumors are fun, number 2 is where things get truly shocking, because Chevrolet almost destroyed them all. GM nearly scrapped unsold cars. The L88 was nearly erased. Backstory. By late 1967, unsold L88s sat unwanted on lots. Why? Too expensive, too impractical, too specialized. Period dealer memos suggest Chevrolet considered pulling unsold cars back and converting them to conventional 427 specs. Here's the kicker. That means history almost lost part of the 20-car run. Dealers, not corporate policy, saved them. A few brave salesmen refused to detune the cars, eventually finding race-oriented buyers. The twist? If those conversions had happened, production numbers would be even lower than 20. Collectors today debate whether any were converted post-sale, but no documented VIN has surfaced. The lesson? The L88 survival wasn't guaranteed. It was luck, stubborn dealers, and racer demand that kept it alive. And that sets up number 1, the most consequential, weirdest fact of all. It was never meant to exist. Here's the ultimate twist. The L88 was an accident. Backstory. Zora Arkus Duntov wanted a race engine program. Chevrolet Corporate didn't. The compromise? Hide the engine inside a production option code. It wasn't supposed to be marketed, promoted, or widely known. It was never meant for civilians. Here's the kicker. The L88 was essentially a ghost car, a loophole baby. If not for racers exploiting the option book and dealers quietly checking the box, none would exist. It wasn't a production car in spirit. It was a clandestine racing part dressed up as one. Even more shocking? That ghost became one of the most valuable Corvettes of all time. Built in secret, ignored by brochures, and hated by insurers. Yet today, it defines Corvette legend. Collectors now see the L88 as proof of how passion inside a corporation can outwit policy. It shouldn't exist. And yet it does, 20 times over. That's why it sits at number 1. So there it is, the 1967 Corvette L88. A car built in shadows, unleashed only for the few, and destined to become an American legend. For years, it was misunderstood. Too expensive, too raw, too impractical. But that was the point. It wasn't built for everyone. It was built for racers. From hidden paint codes to horsepower lies, from deleted radios to explosive tanks, the L88 stands as a paradox. Less comfort, more danger. Less promotion, more legend. And ultimately, more value than almost any other Corvette in history. Now here's the real question. Which fact blew your mind most? Was it the horsepower lie, the government rumors, or the fact it was never supposed to exist at all? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, check out our other Corvette stories. Until next time, keep the revs high and the legends alive.